welcome to the stage Managing Vice President Gartner, Mary Massalio, and Vice President Gartner, Dennis Gannon.
Good morning and welcome. That was a pretty exciting video, right? Mm-hmm. Lots of technologies. And I'm sure none of you is that surprised to find two Gartner experts on stage very enthusiastic about the possibilities of digital technologies to transform the way we live and the way we work. But in reality, that video was probably underselling the level of change that we're about to experience, because our future, our very near future, is going to be so different from what we're experiencing today. There's going to be a time, not long from now, when you're telling a story about a road trip that you took, maybe to California. And the young person you talk to, that you're telling the story to, they're going to get this weird look on their face when they suddenly realize, like, you actually drove the whole time. You know, for hours, you were responsible for steering the car and avoiding obstacles. Like, what if you got tired or sneezed or something, right? And the same is true of finance. There's going to be a day, not long from now, when you are talking about your career with some young whippersnapper, new employee, and you're going to be talking about how the close at the end of a quarter was like an actual event. You know, it took days to do this. It was periodic as opposed to just the books always being up to date. And so what I'm trying to say is, just as the future of driving is autonomous, the future of finance is autonomous too, as Dennis is going to delve into.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. It is a big part of my job here at Gartner to talk to our clients about the future of finance. And autonomous finance is what's ahead for us. A finance function that uses technologies like iPaaS, machine learning, AI, process mining, and more, where the tech is not just executing on the rules that we set out for it, but instead is working alongside people to add its own judgment and its own learnings. When I talk to CFOs about this, I get two reactions back very consistently, right? And the first one is excitement. When we look at this vision of autonomous future, we see huge benefits, because this is not just an efficiency play for finance. No, when we look at the future of finance through this lens, we see real business benefits. I mean, so many of us are not spending our days trying to wring incremental efficiency out of finance, but we're instead being called upon to support, to lead the business through things like the impact of inflation, the risk and reward in our supply chain, all the pressures that we're facing in our enterprise right now. When I talk to CFOs, there's a shared recognition that we're going to need this kind of technology environment to get where we're going to want to go. We're going to need a finance function that can kind of more and more run itself in certain ways. We know we can't just keep hiring more and more expensive and talented people to try to hire our way through the challenges here. So lots of excitement. But the second thing I hear back from CFOs when I talk to them about this are some very honest reactions about what's hard moving forward here.
And there are some serious hurdles and some serious obstacles that we have to overcome. Sometimes CFOs tell us, I love this idea, but it sounds expensive. And we shouldn't really be seen to be wasting money. That's not a good look for finance, so that's a problem. Or they say to us, it feels like finance is never at the top of the organizational priorities. Like in the strategy, we're not number one. Or they'll say, I love this, Mary, this sounds great, but our data environment isn't ready yet, which, by the way, you're never going to feel like your data environment is ready. Or they'll say, this sounds great, but I don't think we have the right mix of talent and skills in finance right now to do this, to realize this future. And these are real challenges that we have to overcome. In fact, I bet a lot of you over the next 2 days have made an agenda to attend sessions on getting a better data strategy in place or getting the right mix of talent for a modern finance function. But in order to get all of these things right, in order to really, really shift, we have to look inside and change our mindset. Your mindset, what you believe to be true and why you believe it, drives everything you do, your approaches and decisions and how you spend money, what you prioritize, what you spend your time on. That's all driven by a set of implicit beliefs that are your mindset.
And getting into the right mindset here for autonomous finance, this is actually not a trivial task. Because for all the progress that we've made in the last 10, 20 years and more, automating finance, the mission of adding autonomous capabilities to a function is fundamentally different, okay? And this is not just a couple of Gartner experts up here getting persnickety about definitions and drawing distinctions for you. No, this actually matters, and here's how. See, automation is pretty low on the independent spectrum. I mean, we know this, right? When you automate a process, you have to tell the solution exactly what you want it to do and exactly how you want it to do it. And all too often, what we've learned is that automation is kind of limited in terms of freeing us up. We never kind of get the time back that we hope when we'd automate. We end up tethered to the process still in very meaningful ways. Now, by contrast, an autonomous function means giving more independence to both people and technology in their own realms to increase total productivity and combination. So in finance, this means we're going to be using more advanced technologies that go beyond automation, using them in combinations that enable us as humans to be freed up for those places where our creativity, our situational flexibility, our emotional intelligence is more critical. Now, this difference between automated and autonomous is not just a matter of degree. Okay, this is a difference in kind. We are not going to get to an autonomous future simply by automating more. This is a quantum leap forward.
It's the difference between, on the one hand, pressing a button on your smartwatch and having to make an emergency call. That's automation. Or on the other hand, walking down the street, having an ambulance drive up to you and say, "Mary, get in, you're about to have a heart attack." That's autonomous. And when you start to see the differences here, you can realize this distinction and see the possibilities for autonomous finance. A forecasting engine that gives you a low, medium, and high scenario for the quarter, say, trying to figure out what would happen if your costs increased by 10%. I'm sure many of you are doing this, given inflation right now, right? That's good automation. But a forecasting engine that's reading enterprise and transactional data, economic data, continuously, and that's telling your ERP to dynamically adjust the target inventory levels, freeing up human energy to solve really complex problems, that's autonomous finance. And this isn't just hypothetical. It's not two analysts getting, what's the word? Persnickety about definitions, right? These applications are happening right now. We work with a consumer goods firm, and the finance department has already turned over most of the decisions, the majority of decisions about consumer credit provisioning to a machine learning algorithm. And the human energy is directed at those customers that the algorithm has determined have likely late payment behavior.
Or at a large retailer that we work with. They're creating a private blockchain-based ledger right now to keep track of their massive distributed base of invoices and payments all across this global distributor base that they're working with, giving them real-time information without all of the manual labor that would typically go into that. Right? So more than anything, right, what I hope these examples have us thinking is that this is not just an experiment for the big tech giants, for big cash-rich firms to be playing around with. No, I'm talking to firms every day, large and small, government and for-profit, public and private, all of whom are pushing the envelope here and making progress. which has some real business implications for us, right? Because what that means is whatever you're doing on this right now, you probably have a competitor, you probably have someone in your space doing more. You probably have somebody right now whose finance team is already looking at how to install smart contracting capabilities to win new business, who's using AI and machine learning to generate better, more accurate forecasts quicker, right? So they see things in the market days or weeks before we do, and they're getting after it while we're still trying to put our information together. And we know we need to move faster on this, and we know we need to make it happen.
So how is mindset going to solve this problem for us? The talent challenges, the cost challenges, they're all going to be really apparent in how we try to move faster on this. But the reason mindset is so foundational is because all the processes, all the approaches, all the strategies that you use, that you manage by and lead by, they're sort of wired into our brain according to a certain set of beliefs that have really worked so far about how the world works. And as we're all starting to witness this new reality of autonomous finance and what it means and what it can do for us, we learn that some of the ways that the world around us has to interact with technology and what to expect of it, it's all really grounded in a world where automation was the name of the game. And a lot of that wiring isn't that helpful as we move towards autonomous. The actions and strategies that feel right to us, that are almost instinctive, end up being wrong on this path to autonomous. Because automating a process is hard, don't get me wrong. But it's not conceptually hard. Like, when you're automating a process, we understand what the technology has to do to get from A to B. But autonomizing a process is hard in a different way. It's hard to understand what's going on in a private blockchain. It's hard to understand how machine learning really works. And autonomous isn't just hard because it's new. It's hard because it's hard. And so that's why we need to approach this set of decisions adopting a totally new mindset.
And I think it's time for Mary and I to get really specific here up on stage. I think we've set the burden of proof pretty high, and we need to start drilling into where is our mindset leading us astray? What are some of these beliefs that we're referring to that we've been trained in by the world that we need to shift to get the most out of this journey to autonomous? I want to start drilling into three pervasive mindsets, in particular, three places that have made sense for the world that we've been living in, but are not going to apply to the world of autonomous finance. And the first of these is the belief that we're all hardwired with, that we need to start small to avoid costly failures with technology. I mean, this is what we have all learned, again, through those decades of experience that we have automating processes in finance. Right? You identify some good use cases, you prove the concept, you make sure the technology is going to work, and only then do we start to scale it out and go further and further, making sure at no point, right, are we going to take a leap into a technology that's going to let us down and is going to fail us. And it seems like as finance in particular, right, we have to have this mindset. One CFO that I spoke to this spring, he put it bluntly, he said, hey, listen, finance is not given permission to fail. Right? We're not some function of hackers or marketers who can afford to break things here. We are supposed to be the ones holding the lines on spending, right? So we have to role model the right behaviors here. We have to start small, don't we? But what we've learned here is that CFOs that are making headway on autonomous finance, the right behaviors that they've unearthed are a little bit more than just start small. Let me tell you a story about what we learned this spring when we looked at 100 finance teams and their adoption of artificial intelligence on the road to autonomous finance. I'm going to separate these 100 finance teams into two groups, but before I do that, I want to make perfectly clear to this group, because I know what you're going to be thinking immediately. These two groups are not separated by spending. Okay, they're not divided by how much they spent on technology or their ability to cut a check on these things. No, the first group that I'll call the dabblers, okay, they get that name not because they refused to spend altogether, but because they dabbled in the technologies that they did spend on. They went on this AI journey in a start small fashion, an average of about 4 pilots in their first 12 months of using a new technology. The experimenters, by contrast, they experiment more. Again, they're not spending more here, but they try more. They get more hands on everything that they invest in. Twice as many pilots on average in the first year. Twice as many experiments. Okay, I want you to think about what happens if I were to ask you to double the amount of new stuff that you're trying in finance in the next 12 months. I think one of the most obvious consequences is it means that a lot of things that we're going to end up trying end up not working. Right? If you double the amount of experiments that you're doing, the number of new things that you're trying, inevitably, you're going to run out of the slam dunk ideas. Right? You're going to have to end up just trying some things, and they may not work, which, counterintuitively, that's exactly what we want. It turns out that putting a focus on learning new things is what drives this journey. The experimenters end up finding a lot more places to put this technology to work than the dabblers do. And they end up much more likely to get the transformational benefits of the AI, more progress on their roadmap to autonomous, all the good stuff that we want. Right? It's not all that different in year one. Those white bars aren't that different, but as the years add up, this focus on experimenting and learning, instead of just confirming what we thought we already knew, that really starts to add up. That interest compounds over time. And when you think about it, I think it makes sense, right? Because it's real easy, if you're on a finance team that's driven by this start small mentality, if you're working on that team, it's real easy to look and say, oh, did you look at that? They're doing a pilot with AI over there. Isn't that cute? All right, back to work, right? It never actually impacts the way we do finance day to day. It stays off to the side like a charming little tech innovation outpost, right? By contrast, on the other hand, if we are going broad on our finance team with every bet that we make, then now people aren't seeing these pilots as some isolated occurrence, something that belongs in a laboratory somewhere. No, instead we're surrounded by them, right? From shared services to accounting to treasury to tax to FP&A, everyone around finance starts to see what the technology can and can't do. We start to learn about it. These experiments they're all individually small enough to be digestible, but collectively they are impossible to ignore. And this is a super important takeaway for us.
We need to be experimenters. We need to experiment broadly across the entire finance team in every step on the path to autonomous. And to be honest, this kind of experimentation doesn't come naturally to most leaders, definitely doesn't come naturally to finance. I know this because I talk to executives all day, every day, about the possibilities of transformation and innovation and experimentation. And when I ask them, CFOs, for example, hey, are you interested in really great experimentation and innovation? Nobody goes, no. They all go, yes, totally. We want innovative, bold decision makers and world-changing ideas. We want to make a dent in the universe. Also, we want a really predictable ROI, and we want to pay back in 6 months. And I really want a concrete business plan, just if we could do that, right? And I know some of you are looking at me sheepishly like, that might be me. That might be me. Okay, I know, it sounds so great. Oh, we want world-changing innovation, but no cost, no risk, definitely no failure, right? That sounds awesome. And I want to eat endless amounts of chocolate every day and not worry about my health and my weight, like not going to happen, right? So in reality, most of what we do in finance works. Like we are the purveyors of reliability and certainty. And that's great. But Jeff Bezos is famous for saying, it's not an experiment if you already know it's going to work. So if we have to do all these experiments, then we need to create more trials where we genuinely don't know what is going to happen. And that is a really different posture for finance leaders. There's an easy way to get your hand or your head around this change in mindset, and it's about fear setting. So Tim Ferriss, who's an author and a podcaster, noticed that we're really rigorous about setting goals. Really rigorous and analytical about what goals we want, milestones, etc. But we're not that rigorous about exploring the fears we have about those goals. So fear setting says, let's do the same as goal setting, but instead of being rigorous about the stuff we want to achieve and we hope will happen, let's be rigorous about the stuff that worries us that might go wrong. And it looks like this. Think of something that you really, really want, but that scares you. An experiment in autonomous finance, something in your personal life. Let's say that Dennis has always dreamed since he was 15 of wanting to open a bakery, let's say. Okay. So he has this dream, he wants to open a bakery, but it's scary, right? Opening a new business, capital costs, etc. The first step in this fear-setting exercise is write down the worst-case scenario. Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? Are you doing something illegal? Could you end up in jail? Are people going to hate you, right? In this case, there's nobody going to buy his cupcakes. Is he going to get in debt? Going to have to owe the bank a bunch of money, right? What's the worst-case scenario, right? This is simple to say, hard to do, number one. Number two, what could you do to prevent that from happening? Like, what are some strategies to prevent this worst-case scenario from occurring? Number three, what would you do if it happened? Like, how would you repair it? I started a bakery, no one wanted to buy my cakes, went out of business. What now? Be rigorous about it, explore it. Now here comes the fun part. Number four, tell me why you wanted to do this. Like, why did you want to do this autonomous finance experiment or start a bakery? There must be something in it. It must be some interest. What was the benefit of taking this action? Okay, now here's the part nobody does. What is the cost of inaction 6 months from now? And what is the cost of inaction 18 months from now? We're really good at measuring the cost of doing something. We're not good at measuring the cost of not doing something. And I can tell you, the cost of inaction in digital transformation is going up every day. So, whether you are looking to experiment with putting smart contracts on the blockchain or starting a bakery, or whatever your thing is, try a fear-setting exercise to see if you can test the organizational resilience and get a little bit more comfortable with experimentation. Because remember, what we want here is broad experimentation, doubling the level of experiments in finance, experimenting in more places with more people, planting more seeds, getting more compound interest in order to change that. So don't start small, start broad. Okay, so let's dig into the next thing. The next way that mindset helps us unlock the possibilities of finance is to think about how our brains have been trained to interact with technology. So we tend to think of technology as a supporting tool, but human judgment as necessary to make all the big decisions. So, this is the world of automation, right? Technology does all the grunt work. We tell it what to do. We tell it how to do it. But we reserve humans for things that require judgment, decision-making, acumen, flexibility. We would not be so comfortable delegating the decision-making part to technology. And there's actually a name for this. It's called algorithm aversion. And we are all victims of algorithm aversion. How do I know this? Well, we asked you this spring about what you are willing to tolerate when it comes to forecast variance. And when we told you that the forecast had been generated by a human, you said you would tolerate 10% variance. CFOs said 10% variance between reality and what was forecast. But when we said this forecast has been entirely generated autonomously by a machine learning algorithm, then we moved the goalposts. Suddenly, we only accept 5%. So what I'm saying is, we arbitrarily change the name of the game and move the goalposts when we're talking about autonomous finance. Instead of just accepting improvements that are better than today, we say, it has to be much better than what a human could do. And I know why. I mean, we all kind of know in our bones why, right? We know about the risks of turning over our judgments to some machine that we don't understand. We don't control the output. We stake our reputation on it. It makes sense. But if there is a place where an algorithm outperforms us, if it can shave 3% variance off a forecast, we should do that.
Now, to be perfectly clear, what Mary and I are up here saying is not, all right, humans, it's been a good run, but it's time to let the tech take over, right? Just go turn it over to the machines and do what they tell you. No, it's not that at all. But I read something a few weeks ago that really stuck with me about the use of AI in the practice of medicine. What stuck with me was the quote that AI will never replace doctors, but doctors who can work with AI will replace doctors who can't. And I don't think it's any different for a CFO, right? We need to get our mindset right for this journey. As our function adopts autonomous capabilities, we need to learn how to give technology credit as much as we give credit to people. And creating comfort with this idea of turning over some of our judgments to technology, and that's not easy, right? One CFO that I talked to this spring is going through the middle of this right now. Right, they have instituted a machine learning generated forecast. They have a massive algorithm crunching an immense amount of macro data, market data, enterprise transactional data to generate a forecast to backstop their planning process. And guess what? The new process is amazing. It works so well. It is much better than the humans ever did. And guess what else? They're not using it yet because they don't trust it, right? The organization can't get there yet. This hits all parts of finance, actually. I saw a recent experiment published in the Harvard Business Review, talking about how an algorithm making investing decisions free from the racial and gender and social biases that plague all of us could outperform humans by an average of 184%. An average of that. So it is inevitable that we're going to want some of that goodness, right? It is inevitable that 3 years, 5 years from now, that more of our finance function, more work in our enterprise will be conducted autonomously. Now, I'm sure, again, you're signed up for some sessions at this conference, no doubt, that are about getting to this mix of people and tech working together in an autonomous world. But what I want to flag here for the group here this morning is that it's not enough for us to just focus on how these tools work from a technical perspective. I mean, yeah, we'd like to know kind of what's going on under the hood and what makes it tick. But as finance leaders, what we really need to know is that the work being done by an algorithm is something that can stand up to an audit, something that can survive regulatory scrutiny, something that doesn't introduce new and unknown risk into our organization, something that operates squarely within our control and compliance environment. That's what we need, right? It's not enough for an algorithm to simply be correct and accurate. I mean, accuracy is table stakes. It needs to be more than that to earn our trust. And it's that something more that kind of hangs us up, right? This vague sense that an algorithm might be going off the rails somewhere, might be doing something hinky. That's what we've got to alleviate. So let me actually do that right now. Let me give you a short list about what emerging technologies like this need to do beyond just being accurate if they want to earn our trust. So, first of all, any autonomous decision-making in our organization needs to be fair, right? Our algorithms cannot propagate discrimination. They cannot manipulate variables for the benefit of privileged insiders at the expense of everybody else. Right? It's not just accurate, but fair. It also needs to be explainable and transparent. Everything is documented. Decisions that are reached are understandable by humans. We don't do something just because the machine told us to. Right? We understand where that's coming from. No black boxes. No just because. It needs to be accountable. If an algorithm makes a decision that causes harm to our customers, to our communities, to the broader environment, who is responsible for that? How do we adjudicate that? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? It needs to be secure and safe. Always have to respect data integrity and privacy. And maybe most importantly, beyond just being accurate, if a machine wants to earn our trust, it needs to be human-centric. Right? The more important a decision we put in the hands, so to speak, of an algorithm, the more it needs to benefit people and not just be indexed around maximizing some abstract quantity like economic value. Right? This is your checklist of what it really means to guardrail decisions that are being made in an autonomous world about what developing trust in technology really looks like, beyond, again, just being accurate. So take a picture, download the research when we're done, commit this 5 things to memory, take this list into the conversations you're going to be having in the months and years ahead with your team and with your executive peers about how this new technology is going to be playing a role in the organization. Because we know that as finance leaders, right, that the one thing we can't do is let the organization rush into something that we shouldn't, introduce new risk, and potentially destabilize our operations. But at the same time, I mean, the benefits are too compelling for us to pass up. We know our business is going to want to get after this, to employ these tools, and we don't want to be that anchor on progress that sometimes finance gets cast as. So let's start installing these guardrails right now so that we are ready to build that trust as we go. Now, finally, let me take us to our third thing here. We've talked so far about how to experiment more broadly, talked for a few minutes just now about building trust in technology. Now, let's talk about what we believe about getting to scale with something like this. What's it going to take to get us from a place where we are doing this as a series of new initiatives and a series of new projects over to a place where, no, this is how we do finance, right? This is people embracing it day to day in the function. Well, the default mindset here is something like people embrace new technology as they see the benefits realized. Now, I'm sure you've all caught on by now. You know we're going to pick at this a little bit. You know we're going to take it apart. But let's admit the appeal here. I mean, basing further adoption on proven evidence of success, that sounds pretty rational. What is wrong with that? Well, what goes on here is that the mindset that we're rooted in here is still grounded in a world that was automated, right? Where the ROI on an automation investment comes from the accumulation of small efficiencies over a critical mass of transactional processes over time. The unintended consequence of thinking about ROI in that way is that it kind of lets us off the hook. It forces us to think about how technology is a good thing for everybody else, our teams at large, right? We think about, hey, this is going to be great because our accountants are no longer going to be doing manual reconciliations, right? This is going to be great because our FP&A team is no longer going to take the first 4 days of every month to update our allocations, right? And that's all good, don't get me wrong. It's good, but it never forces us to think about autonomous technology as something for us as leaders, right? Autonomous finance is not just for the rules-based and calendar-driven parts of finance. It impacts everything that we do. And yet, only 29% of CFOs are spending their own personal time learning about the technology that supports autonomous finance, right? Most of us aren't looking at this through that personal lens. And guess what? That's not lost on your teams, right? They see that disconnect. And that's what's keeping us from achieving change here. Because the thing is, right, employees don't change because we ask them nicely to change. Right? They don't change because we wrote an impeccably worded email requesting that they make a certain change, right? No, they change because of how they see their leaders behave. They change because of what you do, not because of what you say. And we know this. We know actions matter more than words. We know all about the importance of walking the walk, not just talking the talk. But collectively, we've kind of lost sight of that here when it comes to this frontier of technology. Our team's behaviors around adopting new technologies, those behaviors will change when our behavior changes, and not before. Actually, let's check in on this real quick. Let me ask the room here. Raise your hand if you have taken a course on your own time on what blockchain is and how it works. This is smattering. That's not bad. That's good. Raise your hand if sometime in the last week you personally have used a chatbot to retrieve data that you need in your workflow. Not that many. Some. That's okay. Raise your hand if you have built something with a Raspberry Pi. And if you think I'm talking about food, just keep your hand down. Okay, some of us, that's good, but these are the kinds of things that our team needs to see, right? When we want them leaning into digital technologies, these are the kinds of behaviors that we need them to see, right? Because the most effective ways to get your team changing and to get your culture evolving It's not embarking on a bunch of surveys and getting consensus on near-term priorities and forming some task forces, Project Unicorn, Project Rainbow. No, Mary, what is it?
So I think the best way that you can convince your teams is to hack your culture. Let me tell you a story about this. There's a guy, the global CFO of Unilever. His name is Graham Pitcatley. You guys know Unilever, big global company. If you don't know Unilever, you definitely know their brands. Hellmann's mayonnaise, Dove soap, Ben & Jerry's ice cream, very important. They were on this journey to autonomous, and they were trying to accelerate their digital investments. And Graham realized the importance of personal involvement in the technology. And so they launched this training program for people to learn about how to train machine learning algorithms. And he wanted to send a message that this was for the entire finance department, not some little innovation outpost, right? This is for everybody. And so he participated in the training. And I just want you to imagine this for a second. You are a staff accountant at Unilever, and you show up on a Monday morning and you sit down for some training, and right beside you is the global CFO doing the exact same training. Like, what a signal that sends. Not that Graham was going to spend his time writing code and writing scripts in Python or something. Like, of course not, right? It was about the signal. That is a hack. It sends this signal. This is for everybody. Everybody is participating here. And I think the thing is, you only really get behavioral change like this when you hack the day-to-day, what's actually happening right here, right now. And that's not the only way to hack your culture. There's loads of, it's a good one, it's a really good one, but it's not the only one. You could start a meeting differently, spend the first 15 minutes doing rapid prototyping, sends a signal. Or you could invite someone to a meeting like outsiders, startups, fintechs, or you could just ask your team a really provocative question, get them thinking more curiously. What do you think about this technology? What would this look like if it were easy? Changing your culture by culture hacking is about really small actions that you take that are alive. So alive means, number one, they're actionable. This is not some spreadsheet exercise. It's not some theoretical exercise. Number two, every great culture hack is really low effort. By low effort, I mean you should be able to design and execute a hack in under 48 hours in like the vast majority of cases. It's not a line item on a budget. It's not 10 people in a committee. Okay? But it's not low courage, which is the asterisk there. It's not low courage because you're going to violate how things are done around here. That's what culture change is. So it's a high courage activity, just not tons of people and tons of money. It should have an immediate impact. So many big transformational initiatives say, just wait, it kind of sucks now, but don't worry because in 10 months, it's going to be nirvana, you're going to love it, right? Well, the neuroscience is really clear on this. Human beings suck at delayed gratification, as a rule, right? So this is the opposite of this. This is happening right here, right now. I'm in the training. I'm the global CFO. Look at the signal. It's not something we're going to do one day, maybe never, right? It's highly visible. I hack once, lots of people see it. Town halls, meetings, emails, communications, staff meetings, one-on-ones, whatever. Really visible to lots of people. And the final one is it evokes an emotional response in the people you are trying to get to change because people change for emotional reasons, not analytical ones. And you don't have to wait to get back to the office to do this. You could start hacking right now. If you're looking for inspiration, then I would say take a walk around the vendor hall here at this conference and approach it not with the notion of like, I need a tool to fix the problem of my old tool, but like with a little more curiosity. Just go explore. Go see what technologies are out there. There's probably stuff you didn't even know was possible. And then come back and talk about it with your teams. You know, what inspired you? What did you love? What made you excited? What did you get nervous about? What legit freaked you out? And start having a conversation about this because that sends the signal. You're not sponsoring this from on high, like go innovate, little grasshoppers, right? You're getting into it. You're showing, you're modeling the behavior you want. If you want to change the culture, start by hacking and modeling that behavior for your people.
Yeah, I think that is actually a really good note to start to wind up on here because those are some really actionable items, and I have no doubt that they probably landed on top of a few other possible to-dos and items that crossed your mind as we were talking here this morning. And I know you're excited to get on. I mean, it's been so long since we've been able to do this. We want to get on meeting new people, learning new things over the next 2 days here. So let me get us pointed in the right direction walking out of here. Everything that we've been talking about today, all of it, the need to experiment broadly, not just start small, the need to get comfortable giving credit to technology like we do with people, the need to embrace the personal behaviors that will drive culture change. All of this is about navigating a journey that is going to present different challenges for us, different challenges than the ones that we've seen before. It's going to require us to update our mindset for a changing world. And these are all good, specific imperatives for us to walk away with, but let me make things exceedingly simple here at the end. Let me challenge each of us as we go out into the conference and across the next 2 days, and as we get back to the office and start making decisions here, let's all keep mindset on our minds, okay? As we start getting our hands around the talent implications, what we're going to invest in from a data strategy, what tools we want to get behind, check in with yourself as you're doing that. Ask yourself the hard questions. Am I doing this because this is my muscle memory? Because I'm just rooted in kind of some old ways of doing things here? Am I thinking about the world as it's going to be, or am I thinking about the world as it has been in the past? Let's show our teams very visibly how our mindset is evolving in real time, and let's inspire everybody around us to do the same. Let's be experimenters. Let's learn what it means to build trust in technology, to let technology learn as we learn. Let's change our own personal behaviors to set that tone on our team. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for being here with each other and for your time and your energy this week. Let's go have a great conference.